All right, so welcome to part 2 of CSS code challenges and how I'm approaching this one. Let's check in. So where we left off last time, we left with this. Now, here's like a thing that I think I can call out already as helpful, something that's helpful about this approach. This isn't a disaster. Like when I stopped because I ran out of time, but I didn't it was still pretty picked up because we're cleaning up as we go. We're not leaving messes and saying we're going to clean them up later because, I mean, that was the better part of a week ago that we were doing that. I have no fucking clue like where we were at with any of that stuff. And if you're picking up as you go, you kind of don't have to. So that's helpful. So this is what we have so far. This was the reference image. So, not quite there. We still got to get this bottom section figured out. And this is a little bit more pinched than this is, but making progress. So I'm going to say the next place that we should probably go is, let's figure out about how wide this is. I'm sure there's an awesome digital tool for this, but I told you guys I'd show you how I actually solve challenges like this. This is how I would actually do it. I have a ruler that measures in pixels. And so I'm just going to hold it up to the screen. So it looks like
an Amazon purchase, Kyle.
This is from uistencils.com. uistencils.com, by the way, all kinds of good treasures. They're local too.
Is that a physical tool that would be used with any regularity out in the wild?
I use mine all the time.
Outside of Kyle World, do other people use it?
No.
And you know, you used it for wireframing?
Oh man, that's awesome. Check out that stamp. That's new.
That's fucking cool. And I was going to say, I believe during wireframing I did roast you a little bit, but frankly, I wireframed my thing for this week, and it looks like dog shit.
So, got some cool stuff here. There's the pixel ruler. Awesome site, by the way. But no, I use the shit out of that thing, and like as an example of like where I use it, things like, so this is my wireframe for Gmail. I've used the pixel ruler extensively on that to try to get the margins right. And when you do things like that, you start noticing little mathematical relationships. Like, so this is 8 pixels of padding, but this one's 16 pixels of padding. So this has twice as little to do. I don't know. So like it's helping you figure out what those relationships are. So I'm gonna take a look at the original image. That is about 1900. So let's give it a shot. All right, so the thing I'm noticing is in the reference image, this header is centered on the image, and then the image is kind of centered. So those two things should lock up together. Let's see why they're not. Okay, so there's the header wrapper. Okay, so my first question is that centered within that? And I think it is. All right, so then this image, there we go. I wonder, How did I do that negative margin? That's the one that's got the negative margin. As just a test, I kind of want to see what happens if I throw that image inside of the header wrapper. Because I think I flexed that header, it might not work right. Yeah, that's not quite what I was shooting for. All right. So that goes all the way across. Ah, there's the trick. So I want to center this image in the app wrapper. So I'll bet if I throw that on there, does that do it? No.
You had stuff flexing, I think.
I do, but not that. And here's, so this image is a direct child of app wrapper, which is not flexed. So it's like confusing as flex can make things, it's always parent child. If your parent isn't a flex container, you are not being flexed. But since image is an inline element, I might be able to just text align center it. No? What if I did flex this and do flex flow column no wrap? Hey! All right, now we're getting somewhere. Also probably start stepping that down. Okay, more than that. Okay, that's kind of in the ballpark. A little too much. Cool. That's about right. All right, and now it's centered. Cool. So what I did I do anything to the original image? No, we did not. So over here, I flexed the app wrapper and set the max width to that. So I'm just going to transfer that over here. Cool. Awesome. So that's looking a little bit better now. Let's take a look at this bottom section. So anytime that you have spacing between these two things, we're probably handling that with margin because it's pushing something out of the way. Now we need to decide, is the image pushing the intro blurb down, or is the intro blurb pushing the picture up? And I feel like it's pushing the intro blurb down. Because if there wasn't this intro blurb, I would still expect to see like this spacing down at the bottom. So I'm going to say that that image, this primary image, it's a margin bottom of, let's call it 32 pixels. More. Okay, so now it's that looks about right. It's in the ballpark. Okay, cool.
Kyle, I'm sorry, but what was your reasoning for saying that the picture was pushing the blurb down rather than the blurb was pushing the picture up?
So, because if none of this existed, if I got this description and this section in here and just deleted them. Like that. I would still expect that space to be there at the bottom. Like that still looks right. That's my hint that that's pushing the other thing down. You get like, I would entertain an argument the other way around, that like if this were all we were seeing, we'd see the same spacing at the top, but I kind of don't think so. I feel like that would be controlled by other factors. So that's why I think that the image is pushing the text down. All right, so now we're into this section here. A big part of analyzing CSS is figuring out what the boxes are. So all of this looks like one box to me that's split into two smaller boxes that are justified out to the sides. So let's see if I have semantic elements for that. Okay, this tells me that all three of these things need to be wrapped in some kind of container. So it's not just a wrapper though. There's something that's in common semantically with all three of these things. So I'm calling this description, but kind of all of this is the description. So I kind of want to call this one blurb, especially since that's the language they use there, and call all of this description. So to change that, so that's description. Do I have description somewhere already? Yep, in two places. So I'm going to change that to blurb and that to blurb and this to blurb. And then I'm going to put all of it in this thing I'm going to call description. Like that. DL, cool. All right, so then these two things are separate but belong together and are different than this thing. So I got to make sure that that's reflected in the hierarchy also. Oops. Blurb. Oops, I just got myself lost. Ah, it's this. Okay, blurb and this section go together, and then this needs to be separate. So, what is it about those two things that belong together? A blurb plus styles used equals. By the way, like this, the problem I'm solving right now is one of ubiquitous language. I'll show you what that looks like. Jesus. Language. So the idea of ubiquitous language is from domain-driven design. And the idea is that it shouldn't be just me coming up with, where'd my thing go? Here it is. It shouldn't be just me figuring out what a blurb plus the styles used thing is called. That should be part of the language that the project managers use, that the designers use, that your users use. All of those things should share the same terms. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to call this So this is project details. I'm going to call this project meta. And I'm going to call these two project details. That feels okay. And if you're feeling like, wow, this stuff is kind of arbitrary, it is. So are story points, so are lots of things in management. The only thing that matters is that we're consistent in how we use them. Okay, so project description. Was I using project description anywhere? I don't think it was. Cool. I'm going to say project details. I might actually not need to do anything with the project description. Did I use the word details anywhere yet? No, I'm gonna call this project details. Cool, project description, project details, project meta. I like that, that works. Okay, so now project description, I need to get that to flex out to the sides. So I'll flex it. I'll justify the content to be in the space between, like that. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So these are like, look like they're more or less evenly split. They've got some padding in here, but where my mouse is right now, that's kind of like an invisible line down the middle of this. And then they each have their own padding. So if I want to force those to be the same size, then what you do is you take the project details and project meta. Actually, let's make them part of the same selector. And make them both flex 1. That'll make them the same size. There we go. Hey, starting to get somewhere. Okay. So next thing is both of them have like a really healthy amount of padding. And it sort of looks like, if you look at this negative space here, going across and then going down, kind of makes a T. It looks like those are all about the same width. So I have this at 64 pixels. I'll bet if I do, well, let's see. If I do 32 pixels there and 32 pixels there, I'll bet that gets me there. So say project details, padding left 32 pixels, and project meta padding, padding right and left. Okay, it's making the T now. That's something. We'll come back to that.
Carl, can I ask a big picture question?
Yeah.
Why are you using pixels as opposed to like something like rems or ems?
Sure. So when I go back, at the end of this, I'm going to take a look at these values and tighten them up a little bit. But I actually got out of the habit of using ems and rems. They're not quite as flexible as you might think. They're really handy, especially like if I was doing the wireframing as part of like actively developing something, I probably would use those because you don't have to think about them, you just throw them up. But the problem is that as things get bigger, their needs change substantially. Different things need to get bigger at different rates. So how much padding you have, the size of the fonts, like all of that stuff doesn't necessarily scale the exact same way. So in a production app, what I'll use instead of those or pixels is a type scale. So what those look like I go to my personal site. And go over to sizes. So these are, I have two scales. I have one for type and one for everything else. And they look like this. So when I'm trying to figure out what size something should be, I might start with triple XL. And then that's too big. So then I knock out one of the X's. That's still too big. Then knock out another one of the X's. And so like these all have a mathematical relationship with each other. I figured that out ahead of time. And now I don't need to keep track of that in my fucking head while I'm building the app. I can just go up and down my scale. Good question.
And just what's like, say, a baseline versus an XXXL, those correspond to each other between like the type, the size of the font and other categories.
Mm-hmm.
XXL means the same thing no matter what category it's
Correct.
in. That's cool.
Except for the type. The type is different, and the reason why is you need way more gradation between like around the baseline. So like it's reasonable to use a 16 pixel baseline and then also have an 18 pixel slightly larger heading for something. If we're talking about padding, that's way too close. That just looks like you got it wrong. So typography has slightly different needs, but they have the same starting place. But yeah, the typography doesn't get as big as the other sizes do. You might have like a 512 pixel like regular scale. You wouldn't have that for your typography. It's a little bit more fine grained in some areas, and it doesn't go quite as far. It's the difference between the two scales. All right, so this gives us a starting place. So I kind of want to focus on this because it's the thing that's distracting me the most right now. So it's the project meta has a white background. And it also has what looks like, I was going to say it might be the same amount as this little T that we were looking at before, but it's a little bit less actually. So I'm going to go with 48 for the padding on this. But now I'm running into this problem because I already used padding here. Change that to margin. And we'll make this margin also. Shit, I think it collapsed them though. So it's a thing that margin does that padding doesn't. Sometimes if you have two margins next to each other, it doesn't add them, it combines them.
I thought that only happened on top and bottom though. I didn't think it happened side to side.
Let's take a look. If I look at these two elements, nope, they're there. I'm wrong. Nope, that's fine. Okay, and that looks a little bit right. 64 there. 48 there. Yeah, I'll take that. Cool. So now in our description list, let's take a look at those headers. So I think all of this type is that same blue we've been using. So I'm actually going to make that the base color for the document. Oop, that's the pink. Where's the other color? There it is. There we go. So in the description list, the DT is the heading. I'm actually going to apply this to any DT because I think, I mean, it's this. Is it the same one in the other one? The other one isn't a DT. Cool. So this DT, this has the sans serif typeface, which was Railway. And was it pink? Nope, all blue. Okay, and it's also uppercase. It's too big. Font size 16. Still too big. It's better. I feel like it might be 14. Like I said, as soon as you, as you get closer to the baseline, the sizes tend to get a little bit smaller, or closer together, I mean. That weight is too much too. Did I actually, I might not have included a 400 in this. There we go. It's a little bit better. Yeah. All right, so there's a little bit of margin on those too. It's pushing the thing we're describing down. So I'm going to call that. It's small, like 8 pixels. Okay, so we're looking between client name and Fei J. It's like a little bit too much. Yeah, it's better. Cool. Now, Fei J. This is the serif typeface. Looks like it's the same size as the header. Ah, interesting though.
The weight looks lighter.
The weight, yeah, the weight is super different. So I think maybe this was 600. I'm gonna get rid of that. And it could be, oops, could be the same one. Oh, that's way too much on those. So it might be that they used a lighter one. So if I make this 400 and this one 300, maybe. So I'll say 400, 400, 300. Hey! Oh, I was looking at that example. It's like, it looks exactly the same. Okay, the DD should not be text transformed.
Don't you want DD to also be the Garamond?
Ah, come on, man. Still feel like that weight is wrong. Maybe, is there a 500 of this? Oh, 600, 500. Just put all of them in there. Weird. I'm gonna inspect and see if it's taking it. All right, well, it's 500. and that's 600. And that's 4. All right, so it might be that Railway doesn't have it might not have a weight for that. Or when I talked about, hey, make sure it's got a lot of styles. This is kind of the thing I'm talking about. Let's go with 12 styles. I'm looking for a new serif. What's the thing we're looking at? Fei J. And we wanted the Y to kind of have that little curly Playfair display. It's got a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7. It doesn't have a really light one, but God, the regular weight on this is actually pretty light too. I'm gonna say 400 and 500. And then I'm just gonna swap that out for Railway. So I took 4, 5, and 6. There is no 3. All right, let's try that. It's a little bit better.
It seems a little bit more scrunched.
Oops, did I lose it? Let's see. Oh, because I'm still using the old weights. So I make that a 4 and that a 5. Oh, still Railway. Okay, that one looks all right. It's a little bit too big. Page 1. The typographer quote on this in this typeface isn't nearly as good, but that part looks okay. I'm not seeing the weight on those though. We can take a look at the computed and see what stuff actually is. Cool. Y. Okay, it will step it up. I feel like it doesn't have that 500. Because yeah, there's no difference between the 5 and the 4. Did I download them? Might need to be in order. There we go. Yeah, that is scrunchy. Okay, that's that one. Okay, that 500 weight is like exactly the kind of effect that we're going for there. And here's the problem with this too. You can change the kerning on those letters. It's not going to help though. If I do letter spacing, like that's how some people try to achieve an effect like that. The problem is the letter form is like very vertical. And that is not. All right, back to the drawing board. Oh shit, I was looking at the wrong one. Playfair Display is for the sans serif. It's Friday for everybody. Yeah, so there's the railway. There's tons of weights on this. I'm losing my mind. All right. Railway. Back to railway. Cool. Hey, that's starting to get it a little bit. That is a little bit more weight. I kind of want to see what the 600 looks like, though. Although I think I did that and hated it. If I step the size down. That's kind of getting there. That looks like a difference that I actually might be able to hit with some kerning. So letter spacing, 1 pixel. Hey, look at that. That's kind of getting there. If I hit that at 2, that's probably too much. Yeah, it's too much. All right, I'll take that. That's pretty good.
Can you do fractions of pixels or no?
You can, but like it's generally not advised because that starts getting into how well somebody's graphics card handles subpixels.
Sure.
Because the way you handle a subpixel is by like coming up with gradients between two things. Because you can't make the browser have more pixels. So how well it crunches the math on that varies wildly, and it usually just ends up coming out fuzzy. All right, cool. So next step, I want to flex the entire project meta thing. And I want to make this. I made decisions before about, see, it's classic, bohemian, eclectic, modern, classic, bohemian. So I'm going left to right. So I'm going to do that as a row wrap. I want to make rows and then wrap when it runs out of space. And then I'm going to use the size of those divs. So I'll say like DL, any divs that are direct descendants of a DL should have let's see. Actually, is the DL the thing that the DL is the project meta. I am flexing it. I wonder if I project meta, target the divs directly above this, if I make them all the same size, what does that do? Just tries to jam them all in. I should have seen that coming. If I say their width, for right now I'm going to call it 300 pixels. If I call it 100 pixels. If I call it 150 pixels. If I call it 175 pixels. Oh, interesting. Nope, that's what I was looking for. Yeah. Cool. How does that look? Not perfect, but pretty close. Okay, I'm going to call it 225. Okay, starting to get there. And then, so we just need to do this styles used. And give that a class of styles. And I'm going to say that the UL under styles, that's the big thing I want to target, should be flexed, should row wrap, and it has this little decorative element to the side of it. I think that's a UTF-8 character. TF-8 check mark. Perfect. Come on. All right, 2714. See if I can just type it. Oops. 2714. Nope. Put over here. 2714. All right, doesn't like me doing that. Actually, I don't know if it is the heavy one. Let's try the regular one. All right, so I'm going to grab that character, and for each of the LIs inside of styles, I'm going to do before, like that. It's called a pseudo element. Hey, look at that! Look at that! So since it's purely decorative, don't put that shit in the HTML. It doesn't have anything to do with the structure. But you can use these pseudo elements to achieve a similar purpose. Cool. Cool. And I'm going to say, let's make the width on these 225 pixels too. Yep. Okay, too much. Want to make sure this styles container doesn't overrun either. Oh, weird. It's pushing out that container. That's annoying. Did I wrap it? Oop. I wrote it wrong. That's why. There we go. All right. So call that 175. And then let's have a little bit of spacing otherwise. So I'm going to say that the styles, what's the heading on that? H2. Styles H2 has a margin bottom of 16 pixels. Styles used is also that pink. And is uppercase and is railway. Too big. Font size 14. Still too big. 12. All right. And then each of those elements has, looks like the same amount of spacing under it. So if I called that 16 pixels, then each of those has 16 pixels too. All right. That's pretty dang close. All right, so differences I'm seeing, this middle thing doesn't look right. The sizes are right. What happens if I make that 64 pixels? Yeah, I just scrunched that. What if I do it from the other side? Same thing. Yeah, I don't like how that's lining up. All right. So now I kind of have to ask myself, all right, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try reducing the size of these and then increasing the size of that. All right, cool. That's working. So if everything was the same size, that would need to get jammed up to there. Okay, that's like 200 pixels. Still needs more. So I do 225. It's a little bit too much. 210. Back down to 200. There we go. It's about 200. Okay, and now that looks way too jammy. So, all right, I'm trying to rethink this a little bit now. Maybe the easiest way to do this is with a grid. Okay, I have all that padding there. It's 200 pixels plus whatever's on this side. So I split the difference on that and say that it's 116 there and 116 there. What's that get me? Still way too much on this side. All right, what if it's none on that side now? Okay, new strategy. I want to see what happens if I just change the flex amounts. So what if I've got these at 1 and 1 right now? What if I make them 1 and 2? Oops. Oh, because I haven't set the same rule. That would do that. Okay, so now they're at like a 2 to 1. That doesn't look right either. Okay, so what if I do 3 to 2? That's more in the ballpark. Okay, and I step down these meta ones a little bit. Okay, make those 175. And now I'm going to add back in some of the padding, I think, on this one. I've got this margin. Oh. What if I made this padding and called it something like that? So that's going to push it in. Nope. Should. Ah, the blurb is what needs the padding. If I say padding right 32. pixels. All right. Now, will that push the text in? Yes, it will. Cool. Okay, so if I give the blurb 24 pixels of right padding, hey, now it's starting to kind of look like it. There's mine. There's theirs. Let's step back up the size on that H1 again. Too much, too much. There we go. Cool. All right, so now what I'm going to do, get rid of my little example guy. All right, so now this is just the page. There's like nothing down at the bottom. Let's fix that. And add some padding bottom. We'll make it match the top. Nope, we're going to double it. So if I have 24 on top, having more padding on the bottom makes it feel like there's more weight down at the bottom, which is kind of how we'd expect it to be. I'm going to go way more with it, though. There we go. That looks a lot better. Oops, styles used fell apart. Cool. All right, so it's not responsive yet, but I don't know. Somebody turned this into me. I'd go, yeah, cool, you got it. You sort of understand what we're doing here. So before we move on to the responsiveness, if there's anything I can impart to you about programming, it's clean up as you go. So I want to kind of relook at some of this stuff and see if I can make some sense of it. Now I happen to have like a pretty decent type scale in my head just because I've used it a lot. So I'm gonna look for anything that's not in that scale. 24 is, 96 is, all of those are -24, 12 is, 64 is, 28's, like I said, typography stuff just gets a little bit tighter. It would be in the type scale. Yes, 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 yes. I'll take it. Yes, 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 yes. Cool. So no like 15 pixels, nothing that's like not in that scale for me mentally. Next thing, the actual organization of the rules within a selector and the organization of like these selectors themselves. So this is the most important thing to know about this, because it affects the most. Yeah, there. Cool, cool. Awesome. Cool. Good. So like my mental process here is I'm mostly looking for like, people have different approaches to how they organize these. Like a lot of style guys will just have you alphabetize them. I don't really like that. Like I want most important or like most impacts the design to like less impact on the design. Like any display setting is going to be at the top for me. Okay. All right, cool. That works. So then lastly, the organization of the rules themselves. So you generally want to go like general to more specific and then keep specific stuff grouped together. So like these affect the entire page. So I'm going to put those at the top. I want to keep all the header stuff together, including this H1. And sometimes like there's I'd say most front-end developers would like fucking lose their shit if they saw me do this, but I think it makes it easier to read. This doesn't need the extra selector on it, but I think it makes it easier to see what I'm doing here. And like the performance hit for having this extra selector in there is such a nothing burger that I don't feel bad at all about adding that in. Header wrapper. Okay, so header wrapper is going to need to go with the rest of this. I'm going to put it above that. Then we've got the image. And then project description. So I'm going to move the blurb stuff under that. Ooh, I'm using the same selector twice. Project details. Goes there. Project meta. Goes there. Project description. Project details. Good. And then that has the blurb and the styles in it. So I'm going to put the blurb stuff right after that. And I'm going to put the styles stuff right after that. And like, this is another one where I don't mind over specifying the style a little bit. So all of those are in project details. If we just put project details blurb, project details. So we just over specify that a little bit. It doesn't hurt anything. It really doesn't even hurt performance that much. And it makes it so much easier to read.
Why would extra selectors hurt performance?
Because of how selectors are resolved. So for example, take this one. The way that you think it works is find the details and then find the styles within that and then give me every LI that matches. How it actually works is the exact opposite. This is going to match every single LI on the page and then get rid of ones that don't have a styles class in one of their parents. And then it's going to get rid of all of the ones that don't have that in there. So over specifying a style like slows it down because it needs to go through that loop an extra time. But like, not really. Cool. So then the project meta, we've got this div and those all of those kind of go in there too. So I'm going to do the same thing with this. There's somebody who's going to see this on the internet and go like, just use comments for those. Y'all know how I feel about comments. So cool. Now it's like a little more organized. This is significantly easier to follow. All right. So let's see what happens when we change the responsiveness right now. Okay. So it looks just like the desktop one, but little. That's bad. So the way that we make this look like a regular grown-up mobile app is with a meta tag. So we'll call this responsive meta. I never remember how to type it out. I copy it every single time. It's this one.
Did they give you an indication of what it's supposed to look like on a mobile device?
What do you mean? No,
Like, did they give you,
no, you're supposed to use your judgment. That was part of the challenge. All right, now we're a little bit closer. So I'll bet at a certain size, this isn't too terrible. There we go. That's like, that's a tablet, and like, it's not bad. So first thing I'm seeing is that we don't have any padding. And I'll bet that doesn't hurt us too much if we have that on the real one too. So now it's looking like I'm just doing the rest of the padding rules. So I can do them all with the combine selector. So 24 there. I'm going to start with 24 there also, and then 96, and then 24. What's that do for us? All right, it's a little bit better. Padding is one of the things that you start collapsing as the design, as you get smaller, because like, hey, 24 pixels. But if you had this tiny viewport, that's 48 pixels on each side that you're using for nothing. And so those like usually get collapsed pretty small on mobile. All right, design doesn't really support that right now anyway. Okay, so yeah, that's not bad. So now I need to make some decisions about like, where does this go? And I think really what's going to happen is this meta information is just going to flow under the project details. So what I'm going to do.
So how'd you make the decision to put the meta underneath the styles and the blurb as opposed to on top of? Is that something to do with order of importance?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. It's a problem-solving thing. It's also the reason it's over to the right on the side-by-side design. Western culture, you read left to right, so the more important thing goes on the left because that's what you want people to see first. So in a top-down orientation, that's what tells me that that probably goes under that. Cool. So right now, all that's this like display flex, and I don't have it in here, but the flex flow on this is probably row no wrap. I think that's the default. I think row wrap might be the default. That change anything? Cool. So if I want it to be different on a smaller viewport, then I might add a media query for, oh shoot, what's the syntax? So if I say something like max width, what's it at now? Okay, so when I get down below about 800, so I'll say max width 800 pixels, I'll make that my breakpoint. Then I want to change this to be something like flex flow column no wrap and get rid of the justification. Okay, so it's 8:15 now. There's the reflow. As it crosses that boundary. Okay, it's pretty good. And then next thing, this padding situation there, that's going to be different here too. So I'm going to say that project, so I can get rid of that margin. I can get rid of this margin right on that and just cancel it out. Cool. I'm going to do same thing for this, no, not the blurb. The meta. These flexes don't matter anymore. I'm gonna leave them for right now. All right, yes, yes. Let's see. I mentioned like you kind of don't want to use the horizontal space if you can get away with it on a mobile. So I'm gonna make that a column no wrap also. Background's the same, no margin, and much less padding. And let's see, I'm gonna take, and as such, I'm gonna take out the my fixed width on this and just make it auto calculate. And also give it more bottom margin. More. Cool. Cool. It's kind of in the ballpark. Too much space here. Like that's great on mobile. It's just not necessary on, or great on the big screen. Way too much otherwise. So if I go to the primary image, I'm just going to get rid of a lot of that bottom margin. Knock that down to like 24. Maybe less than that. No, that's pretty good. All right, and then the next thing is this this header isn't working quite the same on mobile. So let's take a peek at that. Any fixed widths I'm using? See, by using max width on this one, that really saves my bacon a lot. Because it's not set to 1080. It just can't get any bigger than that, which is a super appropriate use of wrappers. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so one thing is that the header itself, way too much padding. So I'm going to 0. Well, I'm just going to lighten some of that up. And does it need so much? Does it need this negative margin at all? Maybe. Maybe still. We'll see. I'm going to do a more even 16 pixels on that. That's a little bit better. So that like negative margin thing works because it's not the same size as the image, and you can, it kind of creates this cool like, these are smashed together effect. It would still kind of work if this background was translucent. Like if I did something like, instead of making that FFF, if I did something like HSLA 0%, 100%, 5. See how like that works? That still kind of works if they're the same width. Without that though, it kind of doesn't work. So I think probably a better move in the mobile view would be to kill that negative margin altogether. One more thing I didn't do last time, and I should. I broadly don't like CSS comments or just comments in general. Anytime I use a negative margin, like you use comments to explain weird shit. A negative margin is weird shit. So I'll say like making header overlap image. A comment means like, that's weird, explain yourself. A negative margin is like an instant, like, you better explain yourself.
So if I have like literally dozens of negative margins and paddings in my project right now, hypothetically, is that all shit that needs explained, or do I need to rethink how I'm living?
You probably need to rethink how you're living. It's like, it's for an effect. And so if like you're using the effect every time, then all the more reason to explain it every time. Otherwise, you might have botched the design at some other step in the process. All right, so now I need to make a decision. These don't overlap each other now. Do they belong together as one box? Yeah, I can see it. I don't think it's wrong. I do sort of want to see if I center this H1. Centering is like a Pandora's box. Once you crack that one open, you can't fucking stop centering things. So does that look better than this? Kind of think so. I could be talked out of it, but I think that works. So I'm going to say on mobile, that H1 should text align center. All right. So moment of truth. Did I break the desktop view? Doesn't look like it. There's the desktop view. There's the mobile view. Oh, too much space down at the bottom now. Nope. I don't need that and that one either. For this one, I'm just gonna say padding bottom. It's 96 right now. That's a lot. Make it 32. That's better. Awesome. Now, I guess the real moment of truth. My UX buddies are always yelling at me whenever I whenever I like test a mobile design this way, like have to use an actionable device. Let me show you how you can do that. We're back. All right, so whenever you're running light server, I scroll. Oh, it's probably way out. All right, this is on 3000. My local IP address is 192.168.0.150, I think, on this computer. I'm on port 3000. So if I go to my local IP address on port 3000, and oh, dope! I didn't even know it could do that. Check it out. It's actually scrolling it there too. That's fucking cool. Yeah.
I'm not seeing that like responsive thing on my dev tools or on my Chrome inspector. Does that like need to be unlocked somewhere?
Well, I'm on Firefox. Chrome has the same thing. Chrome came up with it.
Yeah, I'm like pretty sure I've seen it and used it before on Chrome, but I'm like not seeing it.
It's this thing.
Oh, geez. I was looking at your screen and I kept like digging around on the right side of my like, inspector. Like, where the frick is it? Why is it not there?
Cool. So I turned in something like this and passed. So yeah, that's how I would approach a responsive design challenge. Ask me some questions.
The spacing between the first and second lines of the blurb and the rest of the body of it is off.
Yeah. Oh. Let's see if we can figure out why. Ah, you see it? Why is the spacing different? Anybody?
I do not know.
Check out that drop cap, the first letter. So I applied a style just to that letter. I made the character way bigger. Made it bigger in both directions. That's why it's doing that. So let's see what we can do to fix that. Okay. I wonder. Okay. I don't expect this to work. I'm going to give it a shot. I can see if I can negative margin that. The reason I don't think it's going to work is that it's not a block level element, but maybe the pseudo element is. Let's see, margin bottom. Yeah, that's not doing shit. All right. Next. What if What if I change the line height? Hey now. Okay. So what that tells me is that I'm able to individually target this one thing because that one line height is different than everything else. So this might be a matter of visual alignment. Can I make it teeny tiny? If I make the line height 0, that's better. Actually, that's not bad at all. Yeah, so if you compare the white space between those, it's about the same. So I'm going to say line height 0. Cool, fixed. Good catch. Other questions?
I've had a major CSS headache that I think that I may have fixed while we're working on this that really helped switching from rems to pixels. But my like kind of bigger picture question is still like, so I have 3 SVG images, which are the primary source of the problem, where when I change my browser size, it's not like a full responsive, like big to mobile. It's just like moving it out a little bit or not a ton, I guess. I don't know. It's just like they're moving in ways that don't look as good. Where like, so I don't know. I feel like I'm not describing this well, but like I'm mostly using my monitor up here, and I like make it look good. And then when I put it down on my laptop, which is smaller, but it's not like way smaller, it's just like doesn't look clean.
Mhm.
Is that really just like a responsive thing, or is there?
Yep. So
something-
like a big thing is keep in mind all those changes, the margins and padding and stuff that I made, that's the first thing that falls apart when you start shrinking something. And it also doesn't work with M's and Rems. It works better, but like I said, it's not a linear amount that it changes as you get something smaller, and not everything changes by the same amount at the same rate. And so like a thing that might help is think about what breakpoints you want to have. And a lot of times that's dictated by the design. Okay. So, yeah, okay, well, I have this. What happens? So here's my desktop. As I start shrinking this down, when does the design start to kind of fall apart? So even like right there, like that's kind of a problem because I started making it smaller, but I don't have this padding on the right size.
I think you're just moving your console.
Correct. You are right. Give me the actual. There it is. Okay, so that's good. You could say that like that's a lot of white space over there on that side. So maybe that's cause for another breakpoint. As I keep going down, like right at the boundaries of the breakpoint can be really informative. So like, is that a problem? You could probably make a pretty fair argument that it is.
And so like once you get down to you move the meta down under everything else, and you had it sort of closer to that border, like that, would you want it to go back to like multiple rows?
Maybe you could make an
So
argument for that.
So it like squinches and then it goes single file, and then when everything is single file, it goes back to double until you get really small, and then it like
totally reasonable. More questions?
How high on the list of like priorities would it be for a future employer to be checking the responsiveness of your projects? I would think if it's like a front end job, that would be something they would definitely check. Does
Mhm.
that sound right?
Yeah. Well, keep in mind also, like, I'm at work. I get my message from HR. Hey, there's a new application. Can you check out this application? And I'm looking through somebody's shit, and I go to their projects. Oh, and by the way, I'm at lunch, so I'm looking on my fucking phone. Like, that's like a lot of the time somebody sends you, someone in the company is like, hey, can you check this out for me? You may or may not be at your computer. And so you go, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Oh my God, how is it 2020 and you're still doing this to me?
Got it.
More
Okay.
than like an explicit responsiveness check, although like that also happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Something I want to call out here. Let's take a look at this HTML again. This isn't atrocious HTML. It's not div soup. Use plenty of semantic names. Use some divs. Used a very small number of wrappers. It's the only 2 wrappers on the page. Probably could have done a better job with some of these names, but like, if you find that you've completely distorted the structure of your app to like achieve some style, you're probably not doing it right.
If you were like actually making that like site itself,
Mhm.
how much of what's in the HTML file would actually be in there, or how much of it would just be like DOM elements that you made in a JavaScript file somewhere else?
Depends. Derek, you're in mod 3, right?
Yeah.
You'll have a much better answer to that question in mod 4. It's not so much like I'm just making DOM elements and adding them to the page. I'll show you what this would look like in like a front-end framework. So if I go to develop member is a good example. So this is a view app. And let's see if I go to the how do I call this? App header, main, router view. What was it called? I thought it was index. God, it's been so long since I looked at this.
You have an index view.
Oh, there it is. So what this looks like in a front-end framework is más o menos something kind of like this, where you've got components that are like HTML elements that are not, that are custom. And so if I look at that landing screen one, Oop, stop. Shit. Hang on. All right, so I have this landing screen thing there. That's just elements. But like, you can still do conditional logic and stuff like that in it. So if I can think of one that has talks. Talk info. So yeah, we have like, you can have conditional logic in these. So like, if this component is being used in a profile, then it shows this. If it's not being used in a profile, it shows that. And so like a lot of that stuff you can do conditionally. So more of that is happening like that. Ultimately, if I'm making the app, the HTML at least would look very similar to what I did. The CSS, on the other hand, would look way different. So the CSS, I'm a Sass diehard. And so things like the sizes, those scales, those are going to be all in one file. All the colors are going to be in one file. All the typography is going to be in these stacks like this. And then when I want to use them, like you include those things rather than writing them out every time. And like same thing with the sizes. So this has baseline padding on it. If I want to increase that padding, then that goes to XL, XL, XXL, etc. So the structure of the CSS would probably look very differently, but it's just variables and ifs and loops and that kind of shit. And maybe my favorite thing, being able to nest selectors like this. That's a Sass feature, but ultimately it would end up being about the same CSS also. More questions? Cool. So hopefully this gives you some ideas for how to approach like front-end design in general, and if somebody gives you a challenge like this, how you might break such a thing down without losing your mind. Thanks so much for letting me share.
Really super helpful.
Awesome, I'm glad.
It was
Yep,
really
thank you.
Thank you.